Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and a couple days ago I made a video talking about Outlaw rogues and how Blizzard almost forgot about us. And only a few days after that video, they go and make some changes to our talents. Now I want to take a deep look at the talents, kind of discuss them a little bit and dissect them, some of the changes they're making, and if that's going to be ultimately better or worse for rogues. Before we go on though, I will say this: I'm happy that Blizzard is making changes. No matter if these are bad changes or good changes, the fact that we are getting regular changes with the specialization, especially in the times of BFA Alpha, where so many specs are just getting complete reworks, the fact that they're still adding a few things to Outlaw is good. And I don't think this is going to be the last few changes, but we can kind of see what Blizzard is thinking, kind of where they're heading with this, just from the changes we had so far. I don't think Blizzard is going to change Outlaw in fundamental ways, like in massive ways. Otherwise, we'd see the same thing with Survival Hunter, same thing we see with Demonology Warlock, same thing we see with Arms Warrior, some major playstyle changes and baseline abilities returns and whatnot. We'd see a lot of changes to the specialization. But no, we don't. We still see that Roll the Bones is an ability. This tells us either that Roll the Bones is fundamental to Outlaw and this is something that Blizzard wants to do, or Blizzard just doesn't have any other ways of changing Roll the Bones, so what they're trying to do is kind of slap whatever talents they can in order to kind of hold the glue together. I think Roll the Bones is a pretty interesting with the playstyle. There's a lot of people that are super not happy with it because of the RNG elements to it. I think that it's part of what makes the spec difficult to play, and I kind of like the difficulty. It's a bit of RNG, but a lot of people don't realize that it's once you get the buffs that you get, it's what you do with these buffs. Do you roll out? Do you wait for cooldowns? Do you line this up or that up? Do you take advantage of the buffs that you have, or do you simply just roll until you get the golden glory? And there's a lot of these things that a lot of people don't understand, which I think gives the spec a little bit of that, I guess, its own pizzazz. Like, not everybody can play it, and that's kind of cool. The spec makes sense, it's just the RNG aspect of Roll the Bones is what they don't like. But we still see it in the game, we don't see it getting changed like Survival. So let's take a look at the talents. Will they hold the spec together and kind of just give us an idea of what they're thinking? Grapple and Hook become a baseline is probably awesome. It's an ability that a lot of people love. It's just so iconic now to an Outlaw rogue. It's like your mini heroic leap of some sort. The fact that you actually just have it a baseline with cooldown reduction means that it's not really going to be 1 minute cooldown. It's really 30 seconds. We are losing an artifact weapon, so that's going to suck. So that's going to really cut away from that cooldown reduction mechanic, but it's still great if you have that. It gives options between hit and run, or if you really need to grab a hook a lot, retractable hook is an option. Acrobatic strikes and grapple hook together is amazing. I'm super happy about these changes for mobility tree of the specialization to kind of bake in some baseline mobility, and then you could just add a little bit of niceties to it. Then level 45, I honestly feel like we're going to be kind of hard stuck in deeper strat. The reason I say that is for PvE and PvP purposes. Mark for Death is awesome, don't get me wrong. And Mark for Death has been almost like a staple of what Outlaw Rogue has been. Most of our damage comes from our builders and finisher of run through. The more damage we can do, is more damage we can do. Us losing our artifact weapon might make deeper stratagem a lot less effective, because we could really combo together artifact weapon full 6 combo point run throughs back to back. But with our cooldown reduction, combo point generation, proc generation, honestly it still might be end up being the better option, because the buffs line up with it really well. For PvP, I feel like we'll end up having to run deeper stratagem, mostly because of Between the Eyes. Between the Eyes stuns the target. It's a ranged stun, 30-second cooldown. I'm not sure if that's correct or wrong. Pretty sure it's not 30 seconds on live servers. It could be. It's a ranged ability that deals damage. If it crits, it actually deals 4 times the damage, so it can have a little bit of bang behind it, but it gives us a 1 second of stun per combo point spent to the ability. So if you spend 5 combo points, that's 5 seconds of stun. 6 combo points gives you 6 seconds of stun. That 1 second is a pretty big difference between Outlaw and other specs, because other specs can spend 5 combo points into a kidney, they get a 6 seconds worth of a stun. Because of that, I'm thinking deeper stratagem might end up being the ability we'll lock into for PvP or PvE, but unless they do something about our run through damage, like maybe take some of it out, add more into Saber Slash, then that might be another better of an option. Level 75, I love what they did with it. Prey in the Wick finally works with Between the Eyes, making it actually useful. Dirty Tricks has also been useful the whole expansion, but now it's actually competitive. Blinding Powder is going to be our best option for PvP and even maybe PvE. reduces the cooldown of blind by 30 seconds, which gives the spec definitely an edge in PvP and PvE situations, because that blind can be used in a lot of different situations and has a longer range. So that means we don't have to be next to a target or nearly as close. We can kind of just throw the blind powder from a distance, then call them together maybe with a sap, maybe a stun, or any of that sort. So this whole row actually has competitive options that are all really powerful, and super happy about that. Level 90 and level 100 trees are the ones that got the most amount of change. In the past, we've seen Alacrity be versing itself against Cannibal Barrage and Killing Spree, and Alacrity won that competition throughout the whole board. So what did Blizzard do? They allowed you to pick Alacrity, and you can pick Cannibal Barrage and Killing Spree by moving Alacrity into a different tree, where it's a bit differently in competitiveness. Mark for Death has been moved up with Deeper Strat and Vigor, which makes sense. You either have more energy and bigger energy cap, more common points that you can invest into finishers, or common point generating ability. Makes sense. This is how you do your common point generation. I'm really hoping we won't have to all be playing Slice and Dice. I'm hoping Roll the Bones will still be somewhat viable, but some people might just go for Slice and Dice and have some kind of a pre-made build just for flat damage without having to have too many alterations. Alacrity is a powerful option in its own way. Having Alacrity and Killing Spree or Cannibal Barrage together could be really strong. Alacrity has been seen to beat out a lot of these abilities in the past. The amount of haste it grants you is a ton. Per chance, common point grants you 3% haste for 20 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. So the amount of haste it gives you is going to be less. It's going to be 15% haste maximum, not 20. But still, it's a good ability overall. Stacks only 5 times, so you can build it up a lot faster. Perfectly fine with it. Great ability, great amount of haste. And compared to Loaded Dice, Slice and Dice, Alacrity, and Loaded Dice are going to be decisions you will have to make. Slice and Dice gives you extra energy regen and attack speed. Sometimes that can be good, but not always, because attack speed on its own, like Grand Melee, is not that strong on its own. The auto attack damage is not that high unless they buff it. Alacrity on its own for 50% haste could be really strong. More energy regen, more rolls, more run-throughs, etc, etc. Level 100, we have a different different talents altogether. We are getting elaborate planning from Assassination Rogues. It increases our finisher moves. Your finisher moves grant 10% increased damage for 5 seconds. So this could be a very interesting combination of an ability. Compared to Cannibal Barrage and Killing Spree, these abilities are a 2-minute cooldown for a lot of upfront damage. Cannibal Barrage for that AoE damage, 1-minute cooldown, so shorter cooldown, slightly less damage, AoE spread. And then an Elaborate Planning, which is just a passive. And the passive itself is not too strong in its own wake. I guess my question is just, how strong is it and how well does it synergize with the rest of our abilities? Because we could go back to, let's say, a very heavy run-through damage build. Maybe we'll say Ghost Strike, right? Maybe it doesn't matter. Acrobatic Strikes will have grappling already. Keep a stratagem so our run-throughs can really do a lot of oomph damage. Doesn't matter here. Doesn't really matter here. Well, of course, we'll take Alacrity, so more run-throughs and then Elaborate Planning. So we could have a build where we have build up for run-throughs, 6 common points ready, full energy, wait until you cap for energy, run through, saber slashes, saber slashes, saber slashes, and then run through again. Or how, just a question of how could it work, you know? I guess you would do damage more for your saber slashes, but maybe Elaborate Planning might actually get us to go with Vigor. Because let's say after your run through, you get a lot more energy to get as many saber slashes in, and maybe even another run through, and then more saber slashes in, and maybe another run through with Alacrity haste build up. So it actually opens us some opportunities. Elaborate Planning on its own doesn't feel like it's an all-in-one button. It might be the better single target button, but Killing Spree with upfront damage could be just as strong. There's nothing that really stops Outlaw Rogue from building up damage. There's nothing really holding you back besides you roll the bones. You don't really have a red buff to build up. You don't really have some crazy cooldowns to use. You have a Adrenaline Rush, and that's really about it. So you don't really have a lot of abilities that bog you down, like the Artifact Weapon. In a way, Artifact Weapon just bogged us down because it told us run-throughs is where it's at. And run-throughs just was so much of our damage that we could just do it back to back to back. And there was no need for Killing Spree. There was no need for any abilities like that. Elaborate Planning would have been insane if we had that back for Legion with Artifact Weapon. But with this new type of Outlaw Rogue, it looks like Blizzard is kind of just trying to open people a lot of abilities to play, a lot of ways to play a specialization, and a lot of options. I really do feel like this opens up us a lot more options. Not as many as I would hope for, but does open us a lot more options. Level 90 Loaded Dice might be okay, but I'm not quite sure. Slice and Dice, again, also really up in the air. Might be some options that still, I'm afraid, Alacrity might end up being the better option. At level 100, though, it feels like you might actually have options, although these options really will come down to, do you have AoE? Lots of AoE? go Cannibal Barrage, because they are changing our Blade Flurry. It's going to be in charges, 25-second recharge. It costs 10 energy. While activating melee attacks also strike nearby enemies, it doesn't no longer has like an energy cap for you, like in terms of how much energy you have. It lasts 10 seconds. With Blade Flurry being designed the way it is, maybe Cannibal Barrage might be good for heavy AoE, but I feel in a lot of single target it'll be elaborate planning. Or maybe Killing Spree, where you can't always be hitting the enemy. You'll kind of Killing Spree him for a lot of damage, then you can't touch it for a while. Then you'll come back, Killing Spree for a lot of damage, then you can't touch it for a while. I really do think there won't be as much of valid options, but more like situational talents. And I feel like in the end, you'll just be like, okay, in this situation, you just go this whole row. In this situation, you go this whole row. While what we're seeing with a lot of other specs is lots of playability options. I think in the end, a lot of them will have like a specifically good one, but there are a lot of rooms to play around with for other specs. I just don't know if there will be a lot of rooms to play with Outlaw in the long run. It's still very exciting to see that we are getting changes though. How balanced are we going to be on the elaborate planning Killing Spree Cannibal Barrage? Like, can Cannibal Barrage be a viable single target option for a short minute cooldown? Or is it going to be too strong? How strong is Alacrity going to be compared to Slice and Dice and Loaded Dice? Because that is one of those talents that I feel like could be a little strong. Anyway, I think this is everything I have right now to cover about Outlaw. It's looking, I mean, it's looking different. I don't really, can't really say if it's looking better or worse, because I can't really go testing this stuff on the alpha myself. But overall, I do like that there are changes, and I'm super excited to see any more changes come in the future. I don't really know if they'll stick with the Blade Flurry aspect. A lot of people said that it just takes away from the specialization, and in a way it does. It's almost like, I guess if anything, I would say there's a bit of negativity with the spec in terms of, it feels like they're taking the things that we already have to kind of bring up things that nobody uses, like making Blade Flurry charge based, only 10-second duration per charge, to make Cannibal Barrage look more appealing. And it's like, is that the best way to do it? To nerf an aspect that is strong instead of buffing the aspect that is weak? It seems like they're kind of going in the opposite way. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.